Hi there.
Hello. Wherever and whenever it is you're able to catch us on this podcast. Welcome to Liminal Writing. Hi,
Yes.
Lee.
Hi, Sass.
Today we were able to find a quote to write on. It's from
The book Memoirs of Hadrian. Sass, do you still have the book
do I?
close by?
Where did I put it?
There we go. Memoirs of Hadrian by Marguerite Yourcenar. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
All right.
Okay.
Quote being, to build is to collaborate with the earth. To
Yeah.
build is to collaborate with the earth. Okay. Who goes first?
Why don't you go first?
Okay, game. To build is to collaborate with the earth. This makes me think of communities, the one that is brought together by shared struggles and shared hopes and shared visions. People like me have spent most of their life supporting this work of building such communities. It brings the image of shifting sand to build fortresses, like we did on those childhood days on the island beaches.
Mm.
Scorching sun ignored while tiny bare hands dug deep to get more solid sand to pack into the foundations of our sand fortresses.
Mm.
And like those days, some of this community building work we do nowadays crumble under its own weight or get easily washed off and melt into lumps of nothingness by
Mm.
overreaching waves of seawater. But then there are also those days when it was earth and mud that we dug our fingers into, when a little bit of water helped us shape lumps of thirsty soil into soft clay that would allow us to mold them into mounds that jut out to heights that make us proud, even if they only reached an inch higher than our knees. I digress, but maybe not. To build is to collaborate with the earth. The quote refers to physical structures that have to anchor themselves onto the earth and some days also know how to sway and move with the earth. But with social structures, it is as much a collaboration with the earth too, isn't it? The ones we build, the ones that are like sand structures or the packed mud of childhood playtimes, maybe they're meant to shift about, integrate and disintegrate. Mark. That's how I ended it. The
Mm.
question.
Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Here's
That's it.
mine.
Somehow brought me to your turn, Lee.
To build is to collaborate with the earth. Of mud, water, sticks, leaves, and stones, my earth offers what I need to create: a home, a circle of warmth, a respite from harshness, a way to feed my hunger, fruits for deliciousness, plants for strength, herbs for flavor, salt for cleansing and life, a place to gather for hands around the fire. She's generous, giving, elemental, and prosperous, this earth we walk upon. We just need to listen well.
Yeah.
What's that?
An image came
A
to mind when you were reading because I visited Lee on a
week ago.
site a week
Yeah.
ago in Canada after a meeting I had there. Lee, I told you about that afternoon where I went with my brother to Crawford Lake Conservation.
Area. Yeah.
The image of earth and its structure was the old First Nation log, what is it? Wooden
Mm.
houses, long
Yes.
houses, the
Long
long
houses.
house that they recreated. The energy was so overwhelming going there, and I could just feel the energy of that
Yeah.
sacred land.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about the images that you used, because it was made of this old wood, right?
Yes.
Put together. And then you come in, and it's like this earth floor.
Packed. Yeah. Packed earth.
And then
Yeah.
in the middle, as you said, were fire pits, right?
Yes.
And at the
Yes.
same time, just how dramatic they have this gaps in the ceiling that allows for
For sunlight to come.
sun
Yes.
So just the whole coming together of these elements. That's the image that came to mind when you were reading
Yeah.
what you wrote. It's just, and I guess when I think about it now, this is to collaborate with the earth. That was a collaboration with the earth, the longhouse and how it's built. And when you are even talking about warmth and all, and you see how they've structured it. So, because it's for winter, right? Too, the longhouse is built. You could see it's built like so that for winter too, they're all together there. And then the heat
Yes.
shared, and there's like almost bunk-like wooden
Correct. So that's where
elevate.
people would
Yeah,
sleep
yeah,
and
platform.
rest, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but how our ancestors had really been so much in tune with nature to be able to find ways to really collaborate with the earth. The ones that have learned through the hard way, through tragedies too, like where we grew up in the Philippines or Japan, where earthquakes and floods and whatever, all this natural
Yeah.
calamities happen. You know that buildings now can sway with the earth, right? Because there's ways now where and I think that's what's humbling for engineers and architects in a way, because then they know that their structures could easily just crumble,
Well,
even if it's
yeah.
steel and cement and whatever. If you
Yes.
don't listen or collaborate with the earth and how its potential movements or how it acts
Yes.
in its nature, then everything could easily just crumble and cost so much
Yes.
life and money.
Yeah. I think it's kind of push and pull for us as human beings
Mm.
that we can be arrogant sometimes and ambitious, yes, right?
Yes.
Because we want to have grand structures, right? And some of them were really magnificent structures, both in the Western world and with Asian civilizations. When I say arrogant, I talk about how sometimes we try to conquer the earth and feeling that we're the supreme beings
Mhm.
here. But as you said, the earth is powerful and we're the ones living
Mhm.
upon this.
Mm.
And we need to walk in the way. We need to understand how it is that the movements are in
Mm.
different parts of the world so that we're living with the earth. We're collaborating with what the movement is. And even for the agricultural piece, right? Like looking at what the seasons offer us and eating what is in season. One of the images that came to my head when you were talking about us children playing with the earth and sand and by the beach. And I remember when you create sand structures, when you hold up like wet sand and you
Yes.
just let it
You
drip,
pour, right? Yeah.
yeah, you pour.
It's
And so that
pour.
was a like image that I had when you were talking
Uh,
about that. Like as kids, when your care is just about building something and
yes.
playing
We were quite
kids.
creative. Remember, we would do
y-
that. And
Yeah,
you dig when because the sand on the surface
yeah.
doesn't really come together. But you dig deeper, it's more compact, it's a bit wet. And actually
Yes,
when you dig deeper, there's water. We are
right.
kind of creative with that. Us who grew up in the islands. Yeah.
And it makes me think about your sense of curiosity and your sense of figuring things out when you're playing
Mm-hmm.
with the earth, like you understanding like so when you dig deep, like how come you're finding like pools
Yeah.
of water
Yeah.
in the sand and why does it seem so immovable when you
Yeah.
try to move wet sand? The dry sand is like
Yes.
easy, right? But for wet sand, it's really
Heavy.
so hard to
Yeah.
push. And you're just enjoying and laughing
Yeah.
with your friends.
Beach trips to the Philippines also meant a lot of eating and cooking of the family in
Yes.
in one of the huts across. So when I was writing this, I had a sensory memory of barbecue smell. Trips out to the beach, which would probably be, in my case, growing up as a kid in the islands, just like a few
Mm,
minutes out to the beach. And maybe
yeah.
you were on vacation in the province, right? Anyway, it's a bit philosophical, but when I was thinking of communities, because really the
Mm,
global communities that we bring together, they're not really physically in the same space, right? So that became my whole thing. Is it like shifting sand in a way
mm,
with the digital world? Should we be more open to the shifting? That there
mm,
will be shifting and there might be just coming together for some
for specific.
momentary purposes. Should we be more accepting of the comings and goings of these
Mm.
alliances and coming together, and not hold on to it too tightly, so
Ah,
that we end up being frustrated and almost like counted as failure when it doesn't concretize.
yeah.
Should we have,
Or it doesn't stay for like 50 years, right?
maybe they really do that, and like sand, I guess it will remain to be there and serve its purpose and spread anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
without necessarily being a construct. Maybe those
Mm.
structures are constructs we have created in this modern age. I'm just thinking, this is a bit profound, but I'm thinking
Mm.
about my work and how sometimes it becomes so frustrating because the standards that we have put to ourselves of community building,
Mm.
such is actually a new construct and a new
Yeah.
way of measuring. We like to see things in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Organizations, global alliances, networks, or institutions. What if they're not meant to be institutions? What if it's meant to be a constant shifting and dynamic thing able to flourish in its own way?
I think it speaks to purpose and adaptability. Because with strategic alliances, you come together because there's certain values that you share, and that there's a particular mission that you're both agreeing upon. Adaptability, because sometimes, because you're two separate organizations, there's certain things that will keep you apart because that's your focus for the year and you're not imposing your own focus and timeline. So I guess like the things we have on this earth, they're kind of separate, but you can put them together, right? Like stones, like, sticks, like logs. They exist separately, and yet there are times that we can put them together for a specific purpose. Maybe that's how we should think about alliance building and strategic relationships. The only true thing is your own purpose. If you find somebody who walks the same path as you, then you work together.
Permanence doesn't have to be a given.
Yeah. Well, even the earth, right? When we think about the
Yeah.
earth, like from millions of years ago, it was just one continent,
That's why
right?
I said,
It shifts.
that's
It
why I
shifts
ended my
up.
writing with integrate and disintegrate. The measure of development, for example, right now, or
Yeah.
even organizational, measures is always almost like associated with failure when it disintegrates. I think it goes to different places. That's how liminal writing goes. On that note, thank you again for listening to us. Until the next liminal writing session.
Thank you, Seth. See you next one.